here we are. Look at this, 7 o'clock in state-controlled Britain, which is apparently my catchphrase now. Two-tier legal system, but, and a media that doesn't seem to be able to look at what's actually going on without completely changing the story. Anyway, right, that being said, who have we got in the room? We've got the UK, maybe the world's top nutritionist, Richard Smith. Hello.
Stephen, good day, kind sir.
Good day to you. Have you had a good day?
Yeah, all good. I've 5 minutes before, I tell a lie, it was probably about 20 minutes before coming live. Mm-hmm. I managed to tip an entire drink all over my PC, over my keyboard. So right. I was frantically trying to dry that up so we could do the live. So I've just made it in the nick of time.
Well done. You do remind me sometimes of Frank Spencer when you tell me what happened, but people won't even remember that. So here we are. I think Agent 99 might be a fan of Phil Escott, because this is a Phil Escott type question. Would you advise against a gallbladder flush using lemon, olive oil and Epsom salts before going high-fat carnivore? I'm 65, was omnivore for most of my adult life, but no highly processed foods.
I'm not a fan. I'll be honest. I don't think you are either. No. But look, there are lots of ways to implement changes, but look, the body is incredibly intuitive. It wants to heal and repair. It wants to detox. It has these natural pathways. I'm not a fan of flushing. I'll be honest, but it's yeah. What do you think, Steve?
Well, the Epsom salts is magnesium, and my joke about magnesium citrate is to call it magnesium shitrate. So I think if anything's working, it's going to be that as a sort of laxative part. But yeah, not for me. But I also like lived experience, and Phil Escott swears by it and thinks it's great. So 2 people in the room, not fans, but we know people that have had a lot of success. So can't really give you any advice other than, I think it's questionable whether it will help. But if it helps other people, I'm not going to deny it. Anyway, right, let's go to the next question, which is from Get Fit. What macro advice do you give for a 54-year-old female perimenopausal struggling to lose 10% body fat? So close, but so stubborn, even when I think I'm doing everything right. What a great question. That's right up your street, Richard, isn't it?
Yeah, fantastic question. So look, it's 54-year-old perimenopausal, struggling to lose 10% or struggling to get, I'm assuming it's to lose 10% of the current weight, body fat percentage.
Yeah, it says lose 10%.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's I'm going to assume that that this person is already living keto or carnivore. Macronutrient ratios. Look, the simple formula for this, and it is different for everybody, but we need to start somewhere. For a man, we typically recommend around 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. For a female, it's typically around 0.9, and that's based on ideal body weight. But that said, I'm also a big believer in incremental changes. I don't think for example, if you weighed 15 stone and your ideal body weight was estimated around 10 stone, I wouldn't be aiming for 1 gram per pound for a man, which is 140, or 0.9, because that is too much of a big step. We need to set goals in regards to this. The body's incredibly intuitive, so we do this based on 7-pound increments. So regardless of what the ideal body weight is, we minus the 7 pound. And for you, it would be multiplying that number by 0.9. And that's the grams of protein that we would aim for as a baseline. Fat would come as nature intended. So ideally, I'm not a fan of adding excessively high levels of fat, although women do tend to need higher fat than men. So protein is the place to start. Eat the fat as nature intended. I would continue with the fat that you're currently consuming in regards to cooking and so on, and then begin to remove the fats that we use to cook. That is going to essentially stimulate the body to burn this, which is stored body fat. So if we look at the volume of fat stored within the body, there's an awful lot of fuel there. And by flicking the switch, i.e., and by that what I mean is we can either burn exogenous fat, which comes from the diet, or endogenous body fat. And by lowering the exogenous, then the body will ramp up its endogenous beta oxidation or lipolysis, breakdown of stored body fat. So we do that, but always hit the protein. The protein is the most important macronutrient. Carbohydrate, I would always recommend to be as low as possible. At the top end, I would say 20 grams of carb, ideally as close to zero as possible. So if you're living carnivore, for example, you're not going to have a problem reaching zero carb. If you live in keto, then it's a case of monitoring the carbohydrate consumption from the vegetables and from the nuts and seeds and so on and so forth. If you are living keto, I would also recommend removing nuts and seeds because this is going to have an impact on fat storage. The lectins found within nuts and seeds will bind to the insulin receptor and potentially signal the body to store up to 5 times more body fat than the units of energy or caloric value that is found within. Other things that can cause problems if you are keto would be things like bell peppers and tomatoes, for example, because these are also high in lectins. And if you are living more of a carnivore-based lifestyle, then milk and cheese, for example, because of the casomorphins and the odd-chain fatty acids, these can cause issues with weight loss or fat loss. So that would be my recommendation. Tools that you can implement along the way is you can eat as nature intended. Now, if we look at the animal as a whole, the animal is made up of lean meats and fatty cuts of meat also. So, and organ meats, by the way. So we wouldn't have just consumed fatty cuts constantly. And this is one of the things that we're told is that when we come into this way of living, I get to eat all the fat that I want. And that's a fantastic thing. And I think it should be, we shouldn't lose that in regards to understanding how beneficial fat is. But too much fat can be problematic when weight loss is the goal. So providing that we're in a position where we've healed the body, then we can start to pull that lever in regards to alternating days with leaner cuts versus fatty cuts. And then there are lots of other things we can do, but I'm conscious of other questions that we need to answer. My advice would be to begin there and then report back in a few weeks and we can advise on additional levers to pull, or join us in the school group. We're live at 8 p.m. for 30 to 40 minutes tonight and again tomorrow evening. And we answer questions to individual people in depth within the school group. So fantastic opportunity to get in-depth individual answers answered there.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you for mentioning that, Richard, because I'll put a link in the comments for that. I've also put a link into my Substack, because I've noticed a few people talking about it. So I'll just say that that's very kind of you. I've got a £10, which is brilliant. Your Substack is amazing, Stephen. Check it out, folks. There is a link in the description if you're interested. And I think if people don't know, every day I write an article that's based on a question that someone might have asked, or what we've talked about here, or something Richard said. Very accessible to all knowledge levels with further detail if you want it. Yeah, I sort of start with it very basic and then have some advanced reading if you want all the science. And there is Nicholas saying, truly the past 2 months especially, Stephen has been hitting out of the ballpark with every article. A really good learning resource. Yes. And for those that really like it, I'm actually doing a book now called Stacks of Science, which is basically been going to collate all the articles and make it into a book. So, right. Okay, let's go back to the question. Thank you, Gaza, for that. Thank you for that £10, Gaza. That's great. Go to the next question. Thank you, Jonathan, for the support. Get Fit is asking also, what do you think of fat fasting? Something I've done, which I actually enjoyed. And it worked, in inverted commas, if you're looking to improve your body composition, but you don't want to fast. What you're doing is restricting protein, or you're keeping your mouth busy with fat, however you want to look at it. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a very good thing to try if you've got some nice sources of fat, and you can be inventive with things. I had whipped tallow, and I made sort of pork fat fries with a little bit of salt. So it was a nice experience. And my favorite thing was the bone marrow So I really enjoyed that. So just cook up a bone, take the bone marrow out, just fat, and you can even stretch it a little bit. Some people to go to egg yolks. So for me, I thought it was really good. It's not something I do all the time, but it's certainly worth trying. If you have trouble with fasting, it's a nice thing to try. What about you, Richard?
Yeah, well, interestingly, this was the other lever that I was going to mention in a few weeks when Get Fit reports back. So look, it's the levers. There are three levers essentially we can pull as far as macronutrients go, because there are three macronutrients. So the one that's going to elicit the biggest insulin response is obviously carbohydrate, because carbohydrates break down to glucose. Glucose elicits an insulin response, and it's insulin that drives fat into the fat cell. When insulin is elevated, it breaks the bonds on the glycerol backbone and sends fatty acids into the fat cell. But as a double kick in the teeth, it also blocks hormone-sensitive lipase, which allows us to burn that body fat. So not only does it tell the body to store fat, it prevents our body from losing fat. So that's the biggest lever. This is why keto and carnivore lifestyles work so well, because we are in a low state of blood glucose, therefore low insulin, therefore we can burn more body fat. Protein elicits an insulin response, but it's far smaller. But fat elicits, it does elicit, people say it doesn't. It does, but it's very, very small, and it's almost negligible, and it does take an awful lot to even move the needle, a tiny, tiny amount. But the fact is, if we were to reduce the body fat, then we would tap into this and we would burn body fat. And that is my first port of call, because we have lots of stored body fat. And remember, the protein is the most important macronutrient. I don't care what anybody else within the space says about fat being more important. Protein builds everything in the body. It's by weight, it's the most, except for water, it's the most prominent compound within the body. So protein quite literally builds everything. And we know this because of protein synthesis, which is a process that occurs countless amounts of times throughout the day. So protein, critically important. Fat comes with protein. So by default, if we eat the protein, we consume the natural fats. So fat is my lever to pull over the protein. But as you gravitate deeper into this, then if we were to reduce the protein, then we would reduce the insulin response, and essentially we could consume far more of the fat, and we would store very, very little, if none at all, of that exogenous fat that we consumed. And this would lead to us burning or losing, burning is the wrong term, of oxidizing that fat. I need to be careful with terminologies, because I don't want Professor Barkay to send me nasty messages. And I'm just kidding. Bart is fantastic. But rightly so, terminologies need to be correct. So in the context, as we understand, we call it burning body fat, but it's oxidizing, so losing that stored body fat. Look, if we reduce the protein, this can allow us to break a plateau. It is a tool that I use, and it is something that I implement regularly. But look, I'm in a very different place. I think it's very important for one to be in a healed position before we start messing around with removing protein and reducing protein, especially for prolonged periods of time. Be careful. My advice would be, make sure that we're in a position where the body's healed, and you can use it to break the plateau short term. I don't recommend it long term. And don't forget, protein is essential, and it is the most important macronutrient. So just err on side of caution when approaching with this one.
Brilliant. Talking of school and the wonderful members, we've got Bobby here giving us a wonderful super chat. So the support is really appreciated, Bobby. Advice, please, for osteoarthritis in knees, please. Bone on bone. I just started an omega supplement, been carnivore for 4 months. Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant question. Thanks, Bobby. Look, first and foremost, I'm not a fan of omega subs. Omega 3s are critically important. But from a supplement, and you can get good omega-3 supplements, by the way, but just like most fats, they are prone to oxidation. And in fact, the research shows that the majority of omega-3 supplements, even within days of being produced, show high rates of oxidation. And essentially, this is what omega-6s are. Omega-6 is high in an oxidized omega-6 called linoleic acid. And it's because it's oxidized, it's problematic. And therefore, we're consuming the omega-3s to sort of offset this and help balance that omega-6, omega-3 ratio, but we could be contributing further to this if the omega-3s are oxidized. If you want omega-3s, there are a few options. My number one option is always to reach for real food first. One of the best sources is mackerel, and this is by volume per 100 grams. Mackerel, sardines, salmon, all very, very high in omega-3s. What I would say is that lamb is very high also in omega-3s, 10 times the omega-3 in lamb found compared to beef, and that would be my preference. There are downsides to consuming fish if you suffer with histamine responses, and we can get into this later if you like. But omega-3s from food would be my preference. Omega-3s from nuts and seeds are not true forms of omega-3s also. So they contain ALA, the human body needs EPA, DHA, and that conversion of ALA to EPA, DHA is so small that studies show that 0 is actually converted. And when we do consume these, we consume it with a whole host of phytoalexins, plant toxins, lectins, and phytates, which cause other problems in the body. Osteoarthritis. So if we look at bone, we need to understand what bone is made of. Bone predominates protein, coming back to what I just said prior in regards to protein being the most important macronutrient. Bone is the single most, it's the highest compound found within bone by weight. It's around 40% of the dry weight of bone, and the rest is minerals. So we can think of bone as mineralized protein. So we need protein. So for you, Bobby, that 0.9 grams per pound of body weight goes out the window, because my recommendation with this is 1.5 grams of protein per pound. So for example, if you weighed, and I'm going to get my calculator out on this so I don't say anything incorrect. If you weighed, for example, and I'm going to say 10 stone, which is 140, we want to we require 1.5 grams of protein, so that would be 210 grams of protein. It's a lot. In the terms of the weight of a pre-cooked animal protein, that's close to a kilo. So that's 945 grams roughly, up to a kilo of animal proteins each day, which I understand is a lot for a woman. Most women I work with do not consume that much. Some do. But in order to achieve this, Bobby, I would recommend consuming 3 meals a day, split 4 hours apart. This is going to do a number of things. That consumption of the protein, which is high in leucine, is going to activate an mTOR pathway. mTOR is the anabolic pathway, and that is going to further aid and build and repair the rest of your body. Again, eat the fat that comes with this, but salt is critically important also. Salt is directly correlated with calcium to the bone, so we need to make sure we're consuming enough sodium. So you could look at your sodium intake and potentially look at a sodium supplement, an electrolyte supplement to aid with this. We need protein, calcium, phosphate, and sodium in order to, at the bare minimum, in order to heal and repair and build bone. We can offset the degradation of bone by calcium supplementation, but we can't increase the absorption to the bone by calcium. All we're doing essentially when we do this with a calcium supplement is we are supplying calcium to the rest of the body, so the body doesn't need to reach into the bone, and this slows down that degradation. But if we increase the protein and sodium, I'm confident that over time you would either stop this dead in its tracks or see some form of resolution. But I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of the Omega Sup. I don't know which one you have. There are some good ones. I know our good friend Jonathan, Carnivore Muscle, he supports a good brand. I'm unfamiliar what they are, but if he wants to pop that into the comments, obviously he's UK based. But be careful, because omega-3 supplements can oxidize also.
Yes, and that's because they're polyunsaturated fat, for people that wonder why that is. EPA and DHA get a good rap because they're good for brain health and bone health. But yeah, if you get it from a supplement, it's different because it's in a jar, normally in a plastic thing that's exposed to light and oxygen and those sort of things. If people are wondering why we talk about those sort of things. So, right, let's go to the next question, which is a nice one from Bruce. Bobby, we'll see you in the school as well, so good luck with that. There are exercises as well you can do. Motion is lotion. Keep things moving. Someone says to you, well, just lay in bed and don't do anything. That's not a good thing for your knees. You've got to keep your knees moving. Bruce is saying, hello, gents. if I give up coffee, only black coffee, and seriously considering it, how long before I feel the benefits and the nastiness leaves? Well, Richard and I, it was very serendipitous that we both, without talking to each other, stopped coffee, I think, in the same week. Mine was because I had pains from after I played soccer, and I thought my football boots were suddenly too small for me, which I learned was inflammation. And going down the steps, I even fell for the sort of mainstream, I'm just getting old, that's why my knees hurt. But it was actually the acrylamide in the coffee building up, because I thought, well, I'll give it a go, I'll stop. So in answer to your question, it was literally 7 days, must have been at most 7 days, because on the Wednesday, when I used to play the five-a-side football in the evening, it was once a week on a Wednesday. That first Wednesday when I decided I've had enough of this, I'm going to try the coffee thing. By the next Wednesday, because that was my control, my football boots and how I felt after football, everything was so much better. It didn't hurt, basically, and my boots didn't feel like they were too tight. So that was sort of empirical data for me. It wasn't subjective, it was objective. So that was 7 days. It may have been sooner. I mean, it might have been 3 or 4, but I still think 7 days is pretty good. But I'm sure Richard has a tale to tell as well.
Yeah, and it was pretty quick for me. So it depends, Bruce, on what you are looking to improve. For me, coffee was the last lever for me to pull. My diet's incredibly strict, and I started to suffer with neuromuscular issues. And I knew that coffee was the only, there could have potentially been external factors at play with this, but I removed the coffee. The very next day, the pain in my legs and my gait improved. So less than 24 hours. So to put this into perspective, I ran a race at my little girl's school sports day. And I didn't run very well. My gait was out. Somebody showed me a video after, and I couldn't pick up my leg. I was tripping up the stairs. I thought it was an injury, but it persisted. So I decided to quit coffee on the Friday because I was meant to run a half marathon on the Sunday. I quit the coffee on the Friday. By the Saturday, I noticed improvements. On the Sunday, I managed to run a half marathon, which there's no way that I could have even run a 10K. So from that perspective, it was very, very quick. The downside to removing coffee is the caffeine. So you will have caffeine withdrawals. You may suffer with headaches and so on and so forth. My recommendation, which may sound counterintuitive, but this was beneficial for me. You could supplement with a caffeine supplement. And the reason, this may sound absolutely bonkers, but coffee contains hundreds of plant toxins. The caffeine is just one. Yes, the caffeine's problematic. Yes, caffeine's a potent neurotoxin, but it's not the most dangerous in my opinion. It's, as Stephen says, the acrylamide, which is a potent neurotoxin. So removing the coffee, you're removing all these other plant compounds. You can titrate down on the caffeine with tablets to help withdraw. If you go cold turkey, which is fine, you can do that, but expect a few days of headaches and feeling very lethargic and grumpy. But you will come through it. So as Stephen says, within a week, you'll probably come through that and you'll start to feel way better. But from a neuromuscular perspective, I noticed the very, very next day.
Yes, brilliant. It was a weird coincidence, and I'll have to take my hat off to Chafee because I didn't believe him. And by the way, I'm on Chafee's podcast tomorrow. So anyway, right. No Carb Barb, you like my deep dives on the Substack. And to answer a question that I'm getting private questions as well, the Substack will be an ebook. It'll be on Amazon. It will be also a, Kindle. And it will also be a hard copy. And I'm hoping Richard will put it on his website because my other books are on his website. Right. Helen Hot Stuff. Hey, great name. Thoughts or opinions? Can we do both? Is that allowed? On PSMF, please. That's protein sparing modified fasting for those people that don't know. And it's a misnomer, really, because you eat protein. It sounds like you don't eat protein, but what they're saying is the protein of your muscles are spared and it's not fasting. So that's what it all means. Basically, you eat more protein, a lot less fat. What do you think of it, Richard?
Yeah, so this, in effect, it comes back to the very first question that we had, isn't it? This is the opposite to fat fasting, if you like. This is increasing your protein and lowering your fat. I would preference this over a fat fast initially, at least, but both are very, very good tools, and I use them both. I do use them both, and it allows me to maintain single figure body fat. Again, with this, it works for a number of reasons. You increase your protein. The thermic effect of protein is between 25 and 35%, which basically means that the units of energy or calories, we don't like the term calories, the C word, but for those who understand it, then we know we're going to use that. But calories don't really exist, but still, not in the context that we believe them to, at least. But the units of energy, the body will use more units of energy to process that protein than anything else. So by doing this, we can further burn or metabolize or oxidize body fat that way. It also satiates. It gives the feeling that we're not fasting because we're still eating. And you tend to eat a lot more, but you do it with lean cuts. So you do very, very lean cuts, and you will lose body fat very, very quickly. That said, fat is critically important. So if we are in a lean state already, after a few days, you may start to feel a little brain foggy, a little the fog may come back, the cognition may be suffering, because fat is essential, by the way. We can't live without dietary fat for prolonged periods of time. We can do it, but it essentially will lead to what we know as rabbit starvation. And we see rabbit is very lean. So if you eat nothing but rabbit, for example, you will die eventually, because we do need the fat. It will essentially, regardless of how much you eat, but it will strip you and lean you very quickly. Again, another tool I do implement, but again, it's one to implement when the body is in a healed state. I think we shouldn't experiment too much with these until the body is back in. The gut needs to be healed. Healing the gut is job number one. And then we need to work on upregulation of hormone production and utilization and transportation before we go pulling these levers, ideally, because we don't want to leave the body devoid of essential nutrients in order to carry out these essential processes.
That's brilliant. MJ, there's a super sticker of $4.99. Thank you very much. And I noticed that StreamYard has done a naughty, because I know there is a question, Amanda, about vitamin C. I saw it and I was ready to ask, and it sometimes flicks all the questions down, or when we star it, by the way, just so you know, it seems to sometimes dump them. So let me just star that question, and we will get to it, I promise you. I don't know why that did that, so I do apologize. There we go, Amanda. Let's start that one. So we keep talking about school. And we'll come back, Amanda. We will do your question in a second, just so people know what school is, because I've had a couple of messages. School is our community, which is still at least 50% cheaper than most other like structured communities, and it is very similar to sort of Facebook in that you can post your questions or recipes, pictures. There's the general discussion. We have playbacks from all our meetings, so there's all these videos, all with PDFs or transcripts. So, for instance, if you've listened to Richard talking about something and you've missed all the numbers in our meetings, you can go to the transcript, you can search the PDF and look up, I don't know, calories or whatever you want to look up, and it will come straight onto your screen. There's also courses that you can do. These are free. They open up a few of the levels straight away, and then the more active you are in the community, the more they open up. They've all got free ebooks and videos and so many tips and tricks. Fruit and veg is all from the fruit and veg growers. So we blow the lid on what they actually do for real. For instance, apples, when they're harvested, they don't get into the supermarket for over a year, and they tell us all their tips and tricks, all the bits about dairy. If you get to level 8, there's 3 of my books in there, which is good. And then the Fat Club is the Piesta Resistance, level 9. Richard and myself, we did about 60 days worth of content for every single day. So that's school, and there should be a link in the chat. If there isn't, then we'll put one in there. Right. And now we will get rid of that screen share. But you can join. There is a link in the description to the YouTube videos you're watching, and also there will be a link in the chat. Right. Now then, Amanda, your question. Let's have a look at that. So, do we need to supplement with vitamin C if consuming 20 to 40 grams of carbs daily, 5% calories, when the rest of the diet is beef, eggs, and butter? I don't think you need vitamin C at all. I mean, we actually lost our ability to synthesize vitamin C many, many years ago. About 20 million years ago, actually. The GULO gene, G-U-L-O is the gene. Some animals retained it, others didn't. So obviously it was a genetic selection. And the reason was actually there was an abundance of fruit. There was a massive warming of the planet about 20 million years ago, which we know from tree records, from seed records, from ice cores. So anyone that thinks that it's hot now and that we're making the climate go up, we actually know that's not really true. It was much warmer then in the Miocene era, I think it was. But anyway, so we lost the gene. And the reason I know this so well is because we didn't need vitamin C, because Lp(a) is a much better way of fixing splinters in the arteries. And we lost the vitamin C because we didn't need it. And then what happened was about 12,700 years ago, the Younger Dryas happened, and there was a cataclysmic event, and a lot of the animals died out. We started agriculture, and we left all the good food behind, and we started to get smaller, and our brains got smaller because we started to eat lots of fruit and veg. So if you eat a lot of fruit and veg, you need a lot of vitamin C because of ferroreductase, because that's non-heme iron, Fe3+, the ferric form of iron, which is not bioavailable to humans. And also glucose competes with vitamin C reception. So if you're on carnivore, keto, or only 5% of your daily intake, when you say calories, you could do it by weight. That would be a much better way to do it, to find out exactly what percentage you are eating. So that's what I would do. I'd look at the weight of your food, but let's use calories because that's what you put. If 5% of your daily intake in photons and heat energy is 5% of carbs, very unlikely you probably need vitamin C, because you've got beef, eggs and butter. So why would you need vitamin C? Because you're getting plenty of heme iron, the bioavailable form, and you're not eating many carbs. So personally, I wouldn't worry about it. But Richard may have a different opinion. I don't know.
No, agree completely. And look, let's not forget that meat does also contain vitamin C, contrary to popular belief. A 12-ounce beef steak, for example, contains 12 milligrams. Our requirement is far less than we're led to believe. And you've hit the nail on the head. If we're not consuming as much glucose or plant compounds for that matter, then our requirement for vitamin C is considerably lower.
Excellent. Right, Richard, 2 questions in a row for you. MJ saying, hey, Rich, enjoyed your episode with Alan. Are you looking to do this on a regular basis?
Cheers, MJ. Well appreciated. Yes, Alan and I are doing a sports type of athletic performance type of podcast, which is something we began probably 2 years ago, I think, Steve. And then one thing led to another, and we just didn't record anything for quite some time. So it's been on the cards for a long time. We're beginning with the introduction into ketogenic lifestyles. It's super simple. We're not going too technical, and it was kept short to about 40-45 minutes ish. So that is one to pass on to your friends and family, anybody who is new to low carb ketogenic lifestyles, because we've basically implemented 2 changes, the most important changes that we believe to make, whether you decide to go low carb or not. But yes, it's going to be a regular thing. So cheers, MJ. Appreciate that. And recorded in my new studio.
Woo! Oh, lovely. That's great. Let's have a look here. Corey, what macros do you recommend for burnout recovery? Lifestyle changes, reduce stress and sleep more, I understand. But regarding diet, I only see you need to be 0 carb or paleo with carbs. Thanks.
What macros do you recommend for burnout recovery? Lifestyle changes. Okay, I understand. Sorry, just rereading the question, Steve. But regarding diet, it seems that I only see you need to be 0 carb or paleo. So ideal macros for recovery basically is what Corey's asking, I'm guessing. Am I reading that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry if I read it badly. I do apologize.
No, it's not that. It I just didn't understand. So yeah, okay. Look, again, Corey, it's our good friend Jonathan, Carnivore Muscle, did a reel or a story recently where somebody said, what are the ideal macros? And he rightly says, I don't know. Because we don't know is the answer. And everybody is different, but there is a perfect place to start. And Stephen and I always recommend, as a ballpark figure, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight for a man. if you're looking to lose weight, we would reduce this, as I say, by 7 grams or 7 pounds. But in this case, if you're looking to recover, you want at least a gram. So look, there are a number of, I'm going to give you 3 figures. 0.5 grams per pound of body weight is the bare minimum your body needs to heal, build, repair, and just maintain. That's why it's called maintenance protein. 0.82 grams per pound is the minimum requirement that we need in order to heal, repair, and grow, i.e. to recover or to build muscle, or if we're looking to achieve something with athletic performance, so on and so forth. So 1 gram per pound is super simple and it's easy to remember. And protein is one thing that we can always consume more of. So I would aim for at least that. Again, as we mentioned earlier, if we are looking to heal and repair something that is damaged, like osteopenia, osteoporosis, for example, then 1.5 grams. I've experimented all the way up to 3 grams per pound in my days of bodybuilding, and it does very much become a case of diminishing returns. Somewhere between 1 and 1.5 works very well for me on a daily basis. And I think if you hit 1.5, then you're going to be covering all bases. So aim for somewhere between 1 to 1.5. Now, again, let's say you weigh 10 stone. We're going to do, so that's 140 grams. 140 grams multiplied roughly by 4.5, because this gives us the ballpark figure of the average pre-cooked weight of animal proteins. So that comes to 630 grams of pre-cooked animal proteins as a ballpark figure. It does change depending on which animal protein you're consuming, but this generally covers most. And obviously, if you're doing 1.5, that's going to be close to a kilo. So my advice for you would be to do that calculation and aim for somewhere between 1 to 1.5 grams per pound in order to heal and repair from that state. Now, it's interesting you mentioned zero carb. If you suffer with damage to your HPA axis, you may require additional carbohydrate. The only way you're going to know this is if you test. The easiest test, in my opinion, is a cortisol saliva test. Super simple and invasive. This will track your diurnal rhythm, how your cortisol moves throughout the day. If this is out of range at any point, then you may have damage to your pituitary. And there we need to look at healing and repairing that. Stephen and I cover this. We've covered it a lot recently in school. And I will be releasing videos shortly, short videos on how to heal and repair that HPA axis. But if that is damaged in the short term, then you may find you require a low level of carbohydrate. And it is very low. This isn't an excuse to binge on carbs. We're talking a tiny amount of carbohydrate each day, just to allow you to have that glucose availability for the cells to use, because the body does need glucose. And under normal circumstance, we can make all of the glucose that we need from non-glucose substrates such as protein and fat via gluconeogenesis. But gluconeogenesis is driven by cortisol, which is produced by the adrenals. So if that HPA axis is damaged, we're going to struggle to do that at an efficient rate. Human growth is something else that we can use, but human growth can also be downregulated if the pituitary is damaged. Human growth, HGH, is something that is downstream from the pituitary. So both of those mechanisms, there are others, glucagon, but cortisol and human growth are predominators in that axis. So if we do have damage, there may be a requirement to put that in. So I would recommend, if you think that you have damage to your pituitary, that could be a test that would be worth doing.
Cool. Another one, really nice, simple question for you this time, from ELM McNeil. Anyway, how do you make your electrolytes, Richard? Are they all natural compounds?
Yes, they are all natural. So the electrolytes, even the stevia. So yes, stevia, which is in the flavored versions, comes from a plant compound, but you can remove stevia through means by which you apply toxins, but we do not. So it's all done natural. Stevia, in my opinion, is one of the best, or at least one of the least damaging of the sweeteners. My top 3 would be stevia, erythritol, and glycerol. Monk fruit also would be up there. If you can be without them, even better. But many people who gravitate into this way of living like something sweet, So the flavored electrolytes do contain stevia. Everything else, again, it is also all natural. They also contain 66 trace minerals. So we've just reformulated to add 66 trace minerals, including iodine and boron and so on and so forth. But what else is in there? We've got lots and lots. We can come back to that. But look, it's the ratio with this that is critically important. The ratio on most electrolytes on the market, in my opinion, is incorrect. And that's what we've addressed with this. But we've added molybdenum, selenium, astaxanthin, which is the world's most powerful antioxidant, along with all of those other 66 trace minerals that I've just mentioned. I use them every day. That's what's in there. Fantastic. We've also... Sorry, go on.
We also have a follow-up question. Is it okay to use the unflavored Keto Pro electrolytes in hot drinks?
Yes, no problem at all. The unflavored. So there are two versions of the unflavored. We've got the unflavored with aster and the unflavored without aster. The unflavored with aster, because aster comes from algae, it does have a fish-like or seaside-like taste, if you like, which many people do not like. It does seem to be more suited to the carnivore community because we don't really care what stuff tastes like. It's all for the betterment of our health. But for the sake of the general population, they don't like that. So we do a version without the aster, which is almost completely tasteless. It's only that version that is available on Amazon. And with the flavored versions, we can't sell the aster version on Amazon because people just do not like it to the degree that the flavored versions are like, and people just don't understand. They just don't get it. So it's led to an influx of negative reviews. So we've pulled the aster version in the unflavored on Amazon, but all are available through the website. And also, just to add to that, that offer is still on. I'm going to pop a link now while Steve goes on to the next question. If you would like to purchase a tub of electrodes through Amazon UK, and kindly leave a review to the link that will be in my description, and I'll also pop it into the comments. And leave an honest review. We will kindly send you another tub free of charge as a thank you for leaving an honest review. So I will do that when Stephen gets into the next question. But those are the electrolytes.
Excellent. Great. I put the electrolyte questions together just to speed it up a bit. So No Carb Barb, thank you for the $10. That's really appreciated. What meats do you consider lower fat? I've had a hard time choking down lean meat like chicken breast or sirloin of beef. Oh, I love sirloin. I wouldn't necessarily call that lean, actually. I don't care for seafood at all. Most days I am short on protein macros. Right, so when you say you don't like seafood, you have wiped out ever such a lot. If you could try scallops. I mean, if it's all seafood, I don't know if you mean fish or whether you mean shrimp and stuff like that. So shrimp and crab and scallops are pretty good if it's you talk about fish. But anyway, you don't like poultry. You could try turkey breast, which is lean, or in fact any of the game birds. In my teenage years, I would have been saying game birds and being a bit saucy, but you're not allowed to say that anymore. Venison is very nice. I think that's pretty lean. I don't know where you live, but if you can get elk or moose, that's quite lean. And bison and buffalo. Where we live, getting bison burgers was difficult, but we did manage to get some buffalo burgers, which were very nice, but a lot of air miles basically. So I think that's about as good as you can do. You could try rabbit. Of course, that's very lean, very gamey, of course. Moderate fat is what I would call sirloin. So if that's too fatty for you, you are going to find it quite difficult, I think. You could look at things like ham. Pork tenderloins are very good source of the B vitamins as well, B1 in particular. So you could try whole chicken with the skin on. So the chicken legs are very good. I like the brown meat on chicken, but I don't like the chicken breast. So hopefully that is a good enough thing there. You could look at processed meats like sausage. You can buy those quite lean. You can buy lean ground beef as well. Just look for something that's like 15% fat or even 10% fat. So yes, it's just very difficult. Richard has put his Amazon purchase link in the chat if you want to help him out with that offer as well. So No Carb Barb, thank you for that question and for the super chat. That is really good. And then we've got a question now from Michael. Carnivore for 6 weeks, lost £8, 18-hour fasting, blood glucose is high, ? 95, no, that's great. 95 milligrams per deciliter is very good. And ketones at 1.3, 1.5. You will be making everyone in this room jealous, because in 6 weeks you've got a high level of ketones, which normally people would lust after, because they'd be saying it's, oh, well, I've only got 0.5 or 0.8. So I think that sounds like you fat adapted quite well, unless you're supplementing with exogenous ketones. But if you're just eating carnivore, well done, firstly, on losing £8. That's great in 6 weeks. Really good. 18-hour fasting, blood glucose of 95. Because you did an 18-hour fast when you took your bloods, that's difficult to compare it to other people, because most people do an 8 to 12-hour fast. And obviously, when you fast a bit longer, you can actually put your blood glucose up a little bit if you have a lot of activity. But anyway, anywhere around 100 is very good. I mean, 110 is actually not that bad. I don't think it's that bad at all, to be honest. Many people don't really understand why I say that. But, you know, if it's 110 as opposed to 100, you know, that is 1/10 of a teaspoon of glucose in 5 litres of blood. It's not that much more. But anyway, 95 is great, I think. So I'd be very, very happy with that. And ketones, really happy with that as well, Michael. So very good. I'll move on unless Richard wants to add a little bit.
Fantastic.
Cool. And then we got Noya. Carnivore
Noya.
2. Yeah. Do you know her?
Yes, we do indeed.
Yep. 2.5 years of carnivore. Lost 90 pounds in the first year. Felt I started gaining 6 months ago. So I've really tightened up. Gave up tea, coffee, and dairy. July, eating meat, fish, and eggs, electrolytes. Anything else I can do?
No, fantastic. £90 in the first year. I mean, that's another person, isn't it? That's incredible.
Yeah.
A big advocate of the carnivore way of living and everything else that is right in the world, by the way. So check Noida's Instagram profile out. Some interesting posts get posted there.
Yep.
Really tightened up, giving up tea and coffee, dairy, fantastic, eating meat, fish, and eggs. Brilliant. So look, you know, we could look at implementing some of the things that we've discussed earlier on in the show in regards to your gut is healed, I should imagine by now. I mean, you've been on this journey for a very long time, incredibly fit and healthy. Lowering the fat and increasing protein and doing the opposite in regards to the fat fasting. We could implement those periodically over a period of weeks. You know, we could look at introducing some resistance training if that's something that you were open to. Resistance training is fantastic for fat loss. It's, in my opinion, far better than endurance sports. So we could start implementing some resistance work. Eggs can be problematic once you've been on the journey for a prolonged period of time, and fish even. So we could look at being tighter and gravitating more towards beef and lamb. That's not to say fish and eggs are bad for you. By the way, fish and eggs are incredible. But what we do find is the longer that you live a stricter lifestyle, that the eggs, the overmucoid in the eggs start to cause problems, and fish can be high in histamines, which can be problematic for some people. So the more we gravitate in the journey, the stricter that we become. But we could implement what we've discussed earlier on. But yeah, I'll catch up with Noir. She lives in my local town, so I'll be looking to catch up with her sometime in the near future to discuss this. In fact, I think we have a meetup planned, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, keep doing what you're doing. You're doing really well.
Yeah, I think somebody said that your link is not working, and it's given a error 404.
Okay,
yeah.
I will go and check that. So
just want to make sure. That's Helen Hot Stuff who's saying that. Check
in the description. So the first protocol would be to get the electrolytes, and then once you've tried them and used them, you leave the review on Amazon and use that link then to send the guys the details, so we can get a free tub as a thank you sent out to you. But that should be in the description. Yeah, seems to be working this end.
Yep.
But I will repost it.
So Cammy's saying, by the way, while you're looking at that, hi Michael, now I see you. You write QQQ before the question. Sometimes they never see them anyway, but often not, or just Q anyway. Right. So there you go. thank you for that, Cami. But that was handy that you're helping people out, because also tonight what's happening is they're flicking the questions around, which is very frustrating. Right, so while Rich is doing that, MJ has asked me, are you still taking stem cell supplements? If so, have you noticed any benefits? I'm looking to start myself soon. Yes, first thing, MJ, I have a link, so it'd be nice if you use that link. And secondly, I did get kicked quite heavily in football, and I was trying to let the injury just fix itself, and it was dragging around a bit. And Simon Grant, who I work with a little bit, who's up at Health Fitness Scotland, who Richard knows as well, is a fine man, and I had went to do some rehab with him on my foot, and it was just too slow for me, so I took extra stem enhance and it went. Plantar fasciitis. So for me, that could be coincidence. Of course it could. I can't say it will treat anything, but we do know that it definitely increases the release of adult stem cells. That has been scientifically proven. I think it's something like 21% increase in the release of adult stem cells, which can go into your body and become other things. So yeah, I definitely think it works. But Jane takes them as well, and she noticed that she had pains in her hands and they had gone. So simple things seem to improve. So this is a great question. I don't know how to pronounce the name. I think that's Welsh, but anyway, what adaptation is sprint interval training looking to induce? Could this adaptation be achieved with no carbs?
100%. So the sprinting is incredibly beneficial. Sprinting when you are on zero carb will allow you to upregulate something called the monocarboxylate transporters and essentially signal the body to adapt quicker. So under normal circumstances of zero carb, it can take 6 to 12 months to fully adapt. This involves the body being able to produce beta-hydroxybutyrate at a high rate, not wasting it, transporting it, and then utilizing this within the cells. In simple terms, this can take 6 to 12 months, as I say, of zero carb. If you adopt a zero carb lifestyle and you do high intense sprint intervals or ski erg or high intense rowing or even sprints on the bike, this will force that upregulation to happen a lot quicker. Now, you can also aid this with things like C8-MCT and exogenous ketones. Links for those are in my description below. Exogenous ketones will also signal the adaptation of these pathways and will allow you to adapt quicker. They can also be used in the short term, especially to help negate the lack of beta-hydroxybutyrate, because it will essentially flood your body with BHB and supply that energy to the cells. But once you can compete once you're adapted, you'll be able to compete at a higher level than you've ever been able to compete before. And we see this time and time again with the athletes that I work with, myself included. I'm a far better athlete on zero carb. The body does need glucose, but we make all of the glucose that we need. And I proved this when I ran a race at Chester, the Chester 10K. I wore a continuous blood glucose monitor and showed that my body not only increased, but increased to a high level, and then gravitated back towards a normal blood glucose range. But yes, sprinting, fantastic with zero carb. Just keep pushing the boundaries. Make sure you're hydrated correctly. Make sure you consume the correct electrolytes also. But training with zero carb is certainly the way forward.
Excellent. Okay, that's really good. Luke, been mostly carnivore, just over 1 year, folate deficient, and recently started to supplement heavily. I need guidance where best to get this, please. Lost a third of my body weight, by the way. I don't know if that little tag of the third of body weight is a good thing or a bad thing. If you didn't want to lose a third of your body weight, obviously that's a bad thing. But I just want to point out with folate, the reference ranges for folate are absolutely inappropriate for this way of eating. When you get folate from a vegan or vegetarian diet, it's what's called a polyglutamate. So it's folate polyglutamate. So there's lots of glutamates attached, basically. And the body only really wants monoglutamate versions of folate. So to be able to get the folate you need in carnivore, you need a lot less, because there's a lot less processing and it's more bioavailable. In fact, this is the story with so many nutrients and the reference ranges, they're so wrong. Also, it might not be folate. If you're taking a lot of folate and you're not having any great joy with it. It could be methylation, it could be B vitamins, it could be B12. So there is more to folate than meets the eye. But the supplement king is in the room. So, Richard, I'll hand over to you.
Brilliant. Cheers, Steve. Yeah, I'm not a fan of folate supplements. Many of these come from plant compounds, and as Stephen says, they're polyglutamate and not mono. Look, Stephen's hit the nail on the head. You may not even have a folate deficiency. What makes you think that would be question number one, because how do you feel? If you feel fantastic, then it's no problem. If you do want a helping hand, then if we look at the folate cycle, for example, the folate cycle is connected to 4 other pathways. The next one in the chain is the methionine pathway or methionine cycle. This is dependent on vitamin B2. Even on carnivore, if we eat maybe over 1 kilo to 1.5 kilos of muscle meat a day, if you suffer with slow methylation, you're still going to be devoid of riboflavin, which you cannot obtain from plant compounds. You will need to add in some organ meats, beef liver, for example, or lamb liver 2 or 3 times a week, and this will allow you to achieve the 3 to 4 milligrams of required riboflavin, which typically we only get around 2 milligrams living a carnivore lifestyle. This will upregulate the folate and the methionine pathway and everything else downstream. So all of these things are integrate. What's that word? They're all connected.
Integral?
Yeah, that's the one. There we are. Spit that one out. So look, first and foremost, if you feel fantastic, it's not a problem. But a better test would be homocysteine. If your homocysteine is high, then again, the B2 will probably B2 and B3, and in fact, B vitamins in general, whether it's methylation and interesting, all of these are connected to homocysteine from endogenous production also, which we can probably get into on school if we're short on questions, because it's incredibly interesting. The key to this, B vitamins, as Stephen says, B2 is the one that doesn't get enough of the airtime. B3, critically important. Pyridoxine B6, which we cannot obtain in high quantities from plants. This is also integral, especially when we look at the homocysteine going on to create glutathione, because that's what happens when with homocysteine, we send it into the transsulfuration pathway and we create glutathione, the body's master antioxidant, which is dependent on pyridoxine B6, which we cannot obtain from high enough quantities from plants because it is bound to pyridoxine glucoside and isn't as bioavailable and active within the body. So my thing for this, Luke, would be add in some organ meats. Incredibly beneficial. We can't achieve the same level of riboflavin from supplement form. We're probably going to run out of time, but we'll get into this next time. But how do you feel? If you feel fantastic, then there's no problem.
Yeah, and that's why people should join school, because we always run out of time. There's always tons of questions. It's incredibly inexpensive. And if you join today, we guarantee that price will not go up for as long as we're alive and running that school community. So it's such a bargain. You'll be silly not to join. I put a link in the description. I mean, B6, you take B6, for example. If you didn't have B6, this actually might get to the people that are always going on about carbohydrates as well. If you don't have enough B6, you can't make heme. There's a 9-step process from the bone marrow. So when you want to make a red blood cell, you do need heme, which obviously carries iron, and myoglobin as well, which also carries iron. Without B6, the ALA enzyme at the first stage will not be activated. The other thing that inhibits that process is glucose. So, that's why the MCV, the mean corpuscular value of red blood cells, can go up on carnivore, because we actually have tons of that stuff going in there. So there is no shortage of B6 for most people, and we get these fantastic red blood cells. But if I have someone that's vegan or vegetarian and they're supplementing and they don't get the right forms, and pretty much all their B vitamins are coming from processed foods, their red blood cells are tiny because the body struggles. But anyway, right, that's enough of that. Well done, YouTubers, for listening of the whole hour. If you haven't subscribed to Richard's channel, then you need to do that, because it's an exceptionally good channel and he's upgrading all of his material and doing fantastic podcasts, having great guests on there. So please make sure that you subscribe. If you think you're subscribed, make sure that you check, because YouTube are nasty. We'll beat those words out to just make sure that you are subscribed. Same with my channel. I've definitely got more subscribers than it tells me. and many people message me and say, I missed your live, but didn't get a notification. So please do that. I hate doing all that sort of stuff, but sadly, YouTube are fighting against us here in the good old state-controlled Britain. Right, so that's the end of it. If you want to see us for another half an hour for a question and answer in school, join our school community now. And we will also see you on Monday for more of the same. And I also do a Wednesday wellness Q&A. So we get lots and lots of Q&As. You get lots more personal attention. So if you don't want to do that, thanks for staying all the way. And YouTubers, we'll see you next week. For those that are in school, we'll see you in about a minute. Cheers.
Thank you all. Some amazing